Time now for the Sunday Talk. Tonight, the politics of dynasties. As you heard, Hillary Clinton has declared her candidacy for the White House. Many expect Jeb Bush to be her opponent. Both are from families with histories in power. And Canada now has its own dynasty, a powerful name that's been invoked this week. So just what is our fascination with dynasties?
Now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become Queen Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen of this realm.
The U.S. broke its ties to kings and queens, but then there's the Kennedy family.
The Americans do not have a king. They need a king, and so they had Jack and Jackie, king and queen.
Mrs. Clinton, can you talk to us for a minute?
Before Hillary, there was Bill.
You're looking at two people who love each other.
Nice to be here.
Before Jeb, there was George W., George H.W., even Grandfather Prescott was a senator. Think Canada is above hereditary dynasties? Maybe you've heard of this guy's dad. It may have helped him, but this week, Justin Trudeau's family legacy also became a line of attack.
And this budget will look nothing like Pierre Trudeau's budgets.
I'm joined by our panelists. Tasha Keratin is a columnist with the National Post and iPolitics. John Moore is a talk radio host in Toronto. And our special guest tonight, Paul Wells, is the political editor at Maclean's magazine. Hi, Paul.
How are you?
Good. I'm going to start with you, though, John. What is our fascination with dynasties?
Well, there was a show called Dynasty. I think it's because it is a soap opera, and we love the whole... I mean, we can identify it because we all come from families, but there's something special about it because you're born to a king, and you are the crown prince, and maybe you have a competitive brother, and then you marry other people and you have children. And when it comes to the Kennedys, there's all sorts of crimes and misdemeanors. When it comes to the Trudeaus, it's how much is he like his father? How much is he like his mother? Why, you know, it's... So there's a fascination with just the romance of it, and it makes a candidate that much more interesting than just somebody coming out of the blue.
Tasha?
I think there's a deep humanity to it. I think that we look at dynasties, not just in politics, but everywhere. You know, in the arts, we had the Fondas, we have the Kardashians now. You know, maybe we've dumbed the concept down a bit, but the point is I think people look for that continuity because it is fascinating, but also because it provides a sense of just that continuity in what came before, and you know what to expect, or you think you know what to expect. People project onto the younger members of dynasties the either sins or the greatness of their parents, and it's up to them to live up to it or not.
Clintons as Kardashians. What's our fascination?
Well, to some extent, it's not our fascination that creates the dynasties. It's the fascination within families for this weird line of business, which is politics. I mean, Jeb Bush wasn't selling used autos down in Florida before someone tapped him on the shoulder and said, "You got to be another political Bush." Politics is difficult. It requires an appreciation of human subtlety that you're better to learn early, and so it makes sense that politics will become a family business. That Paul Martin Jr. would want to do politics because he grew up watching Paul Martin Sr. do it. I mean. Hillary Clinton in 2016, it'll be 39 years since she watched Bill Clinton, one of the 20th century's great politicians, run his first campaign for Attorney General of Arkansas. She's been around this stuff. It makes her want to do more of it.
Is it a boon or a burden, do you think, Tasha, for her?
Well, it cuts both ways. I think that she actually is probably still less popular with many people than her husband was. And you saw that when she ran last time for the nomination. He was campaigning with her. When he was, her stock went up because, you know, he was a polarizing figure, but there was a lot of love, I think, for him as a person. He was a much more sympathetic person politically than she is. She is polarizing in a very different way, in the sense many people feel a great antipathy towards her. So I think for her, actually, the Clinton name is definitely a benefit.
It is kind of weird, though. Almost every other election, we have a Bush versus a Clinton.
It's beyond bizarre. I mean, there are 300 million adult Americans, and you come up with these two candidates from the same family. In the case of the Bush family, I mean, we had father and two sons. In this case, it's even more bizarre because there's a sort of Game of Thrones aspect to the wife of the previous president running. She's like the widow Stark. And then there is this personality aspect where she sort of drinks the blood of the vanquished out of their hollowed-out skulls. But I think it's more than just nostalgia for the 90s and the fact that Clinton was a pretty good president. It's that he can go out on the road and campaign for her, and people adore him.
Isn't this kind of weird, though, like these families in the States?
Yeah, but say there's a Clinton and a Bush running in 2016. It'll be 24 years since the last time a Clinton ran against the Bush. There's 80 million Americans who will be old enough to vote next time, who weren't old enough to vote the last time it happened. So, it's fun for us to notice these things, but I don't know how much it's going to affect anyone's vote. Jeb Bush, if he's the nominee, will be judged on his merits. Hillary Clinton will be judged on her merits, as she was in 2008 when she lost to a virtual unknown named Barack Obama.
Yeah, there's a generational aspect, definitely, I think. And I always feel old sometimes when I can talk about the Clinton era and remember it politically. But the truth is there will be a generation who do associate, like you said, who love Bill Clinton and who have nostalgia for that time. I think for Bush, however, it's a bit more difficult because we're still fighting in the Middle East. Iraq is still a theater of war, and many people have very negative associations with that. So for Jeb Bush, I think it's actually more difficult to campaign on the legacy or to invoke that legacy.
Time to talk about our own country here. We do have our own dynasty in the making. Here's a bit of history. Pierre Trudeau had a certain something, an aura of celebrity.
If all politicians were like Mr. Trudeau, there would be world peace.
And while he inspired devotion from some, his policies and political style really rubbed others the wrong way.
Friends, Romans, countrymen.
Justin entered the public spotlight at his father's funeral. Since then, he's acknowledged the family name, but tried to avoid the baggage.
I'm incredibly proud of my dad, but my father wasn't a political mentor to me. He was my father.
For better or worse, the Trudeau name has resonance for both the public and sitting politicians.
I can remember as a boy when the small deficit started to be run in the early 70s by the Trudeau government, and it went on for a generation.
So this is kind of weird too, Paul. We have the Prime Minister talking more about Justin's dad at the moment than Justin is. What's going on there?
Stephen Harper is obsessed with the Trudeau family, as are many Conservatives, and he can't get the notion out of his head that this could be a rematch. And it's true that in the last couple of weeks, the Conservatives have explicitly started to attack Justin Trudeau as his father's son. That's in keeping with the Conservative habit of always attacking their opponent on their supposed strength. When Stéphane Dion ran as an environmentalist, the Conservatives didn't shy away from the fact that he was an environmentalist and cede that to him. They ran on the notion that he was a lousy environmentalist who got nothing done. And similarly, when Ignatieff ran as an internationalist, they ran on the notion that he was a lousy internationalist who was offside his own party on the big questions. So of course they're going to run against Trudeau as a Trudeau, and they're going to say, not as smart as his father. And anyway, even if he was as smart as his father made a bunch of bad decisions. Trudeau doesn't get to own the Trudeau issue in the next election. It's going to be fought on both sides.
I think it goes to the bad decisions. I think particularly because the Conservative base, particularly the Western base, remembers the National Energy Program. They remember all of the issues that Trudeau brought forward, Trudeau Senior, that is. And it's like basically, a hornet's nest, just poke it, and they go crazy. And the Conservatives know that. They want to mobilize their base for the next election. So invoking Trudeau Senior invokes all those memories of those policies and that time and the deficit and the kinds of things that the Prime Minister mentioned. So for them, they're trying to remember the sins of the father.
Except even the Prime Minister said in the clip we saw, when I was a little boy, this was a long time ago, I was in grade school. The deficits of the 70s, first of all, everybody ran them. And then, the next Prime Minister, who was a Conservative, Brian Mulroney, went on to double the debt. To think that a Prime Minister who has been dead for 15 years and has been out of office for 30 is somehow a liability is insanity.
But he's still considered by many. I think it wasn't McLean's did polls of the best Prime Minister. I don't know who did this particular one that said that he's the best Prime Minister in history. People know him. Even younger people might know who he is.
And that's why I think it's a plus, because you can go through it as Conservatives will, and they hate the Charter, and they hate the deficits, and they hate the National Energy Program, but most Canadians remember having a rock star for a Prime Minister.
It's so interesting, though, Paul. I mean, we've been talking about why we're all fascinated, obsessed, whatever, with dynasties. Why is Stephen Harper obsessed, as you say, with Pierre Trudeau?
For the first week after Pierre Trudeau died about 15 years ago, the National Post forbade any commentary. The editor of the National Post said, we're not going to run anything that says anything bad about the dead Pierre Trudeau. The first piece they ran that was a critique of Pierre Trudeau was by Stephen Harper. He did not know that Justin Trudeau was going to go into politics, and he tore a strip off of Pierre Trudeau that I'm pretty sure Pierre Trudeau felt in his grave. He moved to Alberta because he saw it as a land of opportunity. He saw that opportunity fade because of the National Energy Program. His entire politics is about undoing the harm that Pierre Trudeau did a generation ago. And then this guy comes along, you better believe it bugs him.
I think it bugs him too, because this guy is seen by many as riding on the coattails of his father in a sense of taking the leadership of the party and having this kind of devotion. He has a lot of charisma. I'd say very different charisma than his father had, but the policies are pretty thin. We don't even still fully know what young Trudeau stands for, but there's this projection of everything of the past that the Prime Minister, I think, would like to do because, like I said, it gets some people so upset.
Almost a rematch, sounds like.
To a degree. I mean, I think there's something almost Freudian about it. I think Stephen Harper is the geeky kid with glasses who grew up, and the high school prom king really bugged him. And that guy's gone, so now he has to pick a fight with his son. And, you know, you're right. You got to judge Justin on his merits, and I don't know what they are, and I'm not going to tell you they're amazing, but I will tell you, you got to fight the Trudeau you got.
So how do you fight that then? Like, how does Justin Trudeau battle this attack on his dad, or is this good for him?
Well, there's a term in French, se faire un prénom, to make a first name for yourself. He has to demonstrate more and more that it's important to elect Justin Trudeau because Justin Trudeau has good ideas, not just because he had a famous father. I mean, more than half of the Canadian electorate in this next election will never have had a chance to vote for or against the Liberals when Pierre Trudeau was the leader. To some extent, when the Conservatives say, oh, bad Trudeau, or the Liberals say, hey, great Trudeau, they're fighting for a minority of the electorate that has a strong opinion. Most Canadians don't know how they're supposed to feel about a Trudeau.
But we've got to wrap up in just a moment. Last quick point to each of you. Who does this help, and where are Canadians?
Well, it helps the people, like I said, it helps the Conservatives get out their base in the sense of demonizing him, but it also evokes that kind of backlash, I think, by people who do feel the nostalgia and younger people who've learned about him in history. Like I said, they may not love him, but they know his name. Name recognition is very important, and I think younger Trudeau should not trade so much on that because it's a double-edged sword.
He claims he's not trading on it. And in interviews, you know, if I brought up his, I know he is, but I bring up his father when we're doing interviews, and he'll say, I'm my father's son, but, you know, we're distinct personalities. I think if he can trade on it both ways, and I think it's going to work for him. People have the nostalgia, and then he can say, no, that's not me. That's just my father.
So who's next? Ben Mulroney? Ben Harper?
Clark?
Rachel?
Well, and that's the obsession, isn't it? And neither one of them have ever shown any inclination.
Thanks so much. That was fun. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.